Telnet, SSH, right? LDAP, then SNMP, FTP, TFTP, right? So yeah, the graph. And then what are the requirements for network management, right? Why do we need to manage? So to monitor the network, availability, and then increase the uptime availability and reduce the downtime. So for security, right? And then traffic, how to manage traffic. So then SNMP, we talked about this. SNMP, right? So centralized network management, then hierarchical network management. Yes, any question? Okay, one of you raised your hand, so that is why I asked.
No, sir.
Okay. So then, right, in summary. Okay, so today we are going to learn about Linux or Unix. So this Linux, it started with Unix, right? So in the earlier days, it was Unix, right? Then came Linux. So we will learn about the history as well. So let me open the. Okay, so today we are going to learn about Linux or Unix operating system. Okay, so introduction, then history, what is Linux? So Linux came afterwards. First it was Unix, right? Then what is the OS structure, file system, directories, then user groups, permissions. So this we will talk about today. So this is about the Unix or Linux operating system. They are similar, but now Unix. Okay, so when this started, right, the Unix, it was mainly for servers, right? So we had Unix servers. So those were non-graphical environments, right? Non-GUI. That means they don't have a graphical environment, right? Text based, right? Basically. So you have to have a lot of knowledge to install, maintain, and things like that, right? So it was very powerful, right? So the text environment. So there are commands where you can do a lot of things, right? Very powerful. There are very powerful commands in Unix, and so the difference between this Unix, Linux, and Windows is so Windows is basically GUI, that is graphical, right? It has a GUI. It's a GUI based one, and Unix or Linux is mainly text based, right? So nowadays, although you have graphical environment in Linux as well, so those days it was purely text based, right? And the reason now most people use Windows is because it's easy to use, right? You don't have to have that much of knowledge to use Windows, because you just it's graphical. Everything is graphical, right? um, Windows, you can use the mouse to drag here and there, and you can copy files by using the mouse, right? You can drag files here and there, right, for copying. But in Unix or Linux, if you're taking the non-GUI environment, so you have to type a command for everything, right? For copying or for doing everything, you have to type a command, right? So you have to know the commands to properly use Linux, right? So that is why most people went for this Windows, right? The graphical one, because it's easy and but for the uh, professional users, or right, the people who have experience in this stuff, right? So this Linux, you can do a lot, right? It's very powerful, and in Windows, you cannot, should I say, you cannot do much changes, right? It's restricted. Windows does not allow you to change things like system files and so on, right? And it doesn't allow you to configure critical system files, right? They have basically put security, or made it as read only, or they have put a lot of security so that the normal user cannot tamper with those settings and make Windows unusable, right? But in Linux, if you have now in Windows, even if you have admin powers, right? Some things are restricted, right? Like deleting some system files and so on, or changing some files is restricted, right? But in Linux, Unix, right? If you have admin, then you can even destroy your operating system also if you do some incorrect changes, or you can delete files and so on. You have the power, so you have the power to do anything as long as you know how to do it, right? So I will show you now. When you type these commands in Linux or Unix, so you have to be very careful that you properly type the commands, right? Especially these okay, hands up people who have used Linux or are familiar with Linux environment. How many are familiar with Linux environment? Are you using Linux environment now? Okay, one person is there. Okay, only one person is familiar with Linux. Okay, so these are free things, right? You don't have to pay, and you don't have to like Windows, you don't have to install crack and so on, right? Due to these license issues, so you can install this, and you can learn about these things, right? So because it's free, and you can install and learn about these things, how they work and what are the commands, right? So I will teach you some today. So maybe after that you can install and see. Right now in Linux, there are these things. In Windows also it's there. There's a thing called Wildcard, right? Where for certain commands, some of you might even know this. For example, so this is a wildcard star, right? It means usually, now if you type like this, so yes, what does this mean? Vidasun, do you know what this means?
Actually, no, sir.
Okay, right. So you don't know about wildcards. Okay, now actually this means
All we use wildcard for all mean
usually this star we use for all. So
and
in this,
FG. This is a file name. Start from FG and other characters is any character.
yes, correct, right. That's the meaning. So this what I wrote here, FG star, this means any words which start with F and G, the first two letters, right? So the star means at the end, that means it can be any, right? Any word which starts with FG. So the remaining, there is no restriction on the number of letters or whatever, right? It just has to start with this FG character, right? So this star, we call it a wildcard. So it's easy. Let's say we want to search some files, right, starting with FG. So we can search like that. This, right? Let me show you in Windows also. When you use the search function, you can use this, right? Okay, let me, right now, I have opened Explorer, and then now I'm in the Windows folder, right, in C, where you have installed your OS, right, the Windows folder. So in this search, yeah, let me search something. Yeah, now if I want to like check what the configuration files, so they no, let's say ini files, so they are configuration files, right? Okay, so the now file name, right? So let's say this is the name of the file, and then it has a extension, right? Right, so this is the format of a file name. The first part before the dot, that is the name of the file, and then the last part after the dot, that is the extension of the file. So, right, this is the usual format of the file name, right? So the last part, that that says what sort of a file this is, right? Now this txt means it's a text file, right? So I think most of you should know this, right? When you can rename the file, and you can even change this .txt to something else, but then when you double click and open the file, you will not be able to properly open the file in the correct program. So but you can change, right? If you want, you can change this last part of the file to, let's say, now if it is a image, say a JPEG image, then this last part will be JPG, right? So likewise. Okay, now let's say in this folder, Windows folder, so I want to find any, so that means the first part can be anything, right? The last part after the dot, it should be ini, right? So I want to search for files in the Windows folder with this ini extension, right? So how I type with a wildcard is now .ini is the part we know, but we don't know the name, any name, right? We want uh, any files which has this ini extension, right? Any file. So name can be anything. So we put a star there, and then .ini, right? So if you search, yeah. So I'm already getting one file. So there's a system.ini file. It shows the location also in the Windows, directly in the Windows folder, right? Yeah, okay. So there are a lot of files. Right. So this is an example, right? by using the wildcard. So in Linux also, you can use these wildcards not only for this purpose. So in search also, it's very powerful in Unix or Linux, where you can give, like advanced sort of commands for search and things like that, right? Much advanced than in Windows, right? Okay, so you get the idea, right? So why we use these wildcards. So otherwise, it would be difficult for us to, otherwise we would have to have some kind of name. We have to know some name to search. So without knowing a name, or you can, okay, now, yeah, so let's say we want to know what are the files containing ASP, right? Okay, first let me stop this. So I put ASP and start. Right, okay, so it will give me files or folders which contain that. Yeah, so this Windows 10, it's a bit advanced, the search function. As you can see, it does not only give me the files or folders starting with ASP, but it gives all the values which this ASP is included, right? So if ASP is there even in the middle, it will show me, right? Yeah, so yeah, it even goes for the extensions also. Yeah, so this in Windows 10 they have they have put some new functions so that it's easy to find yeah, any file with this name, right? Okay. So basically you get the picture, right? Now since I have not put any extension, it's giving the folders also. Now if I have an extension, then this search will be different. Then I can get some specific search results. So there were some files starting with ASP INI files, right? Okay. Yeah, it takes some time because it has to go through. There are a lot of files in Windows folder. There's a thing called indexing also in Windows. So search indexing, if you include this Windows folder, so then when you search, it will be much faster than this, right? So indexing means it will build some kind of like a map or index, right, of the files which are in some kind of folder. So then when you search, it will check the index, right? So that will be much faster, the search. So it's a kind of a method where searches can be faster, right? But indexing, that will take up some space from your hard drive. So if you include a folder with a lot of files for indexing, then that will take some space in your hard drive, right? But when you search those folders with indexing, it will be much faster than this, right? So this is taking time because it's going through each and every file which is in this folder, right? So anyway, you get the picture, right? Okay, so yeah, we will go through this. Okay, now Unix. So it's a multi-user multitasking operating system, right? So that means it can be used by multiple users, and then multiple tasks can be done, right? So it's so Unix is that kind of operating system. So you can have many users logged into the system simultaneously, right? So let's say 10 or 20. So the number of users can be logged in to the system at the same time, right? Simultaneously means at the same time, each running many programs. So let's say there are 20 users logged in. So 20 users logged in at the same time. So they will be running, each user, let's say, will be running like, two programs or three programs, right? So then total it will be, if 20 users, then it will be, let's say if three programs run by one user, then it will be like 60 programs, right? Okay, so that capability is there, right? Multitasking, multi-user. So that is one of the features that should be there in a proper OS, right? Okay, it's the kernel's job to keep each process and user separate and to regulate access to the system hardware. Right now, I told you that there were like uh, 20 users logged in, right? Okay, so 20 users logged in and they are using like 3 programs each, so 60 programs, right? So okay, although we have a lot of users and lot of programs, if you take the hardware, we have one usually. Okay, like here, if you take a server, then maybe there can be two. Yeah, minimum there will be 2 CPUs, right? Okay, so then there will be some memory. Maybe 16 or 32. Those days earlier, of course, memory capacity was not uh, that much available, right? Not like nowadays. Nowadays in servers we have 16, 32, 64, like that. So high-end servers maybe more. We can go to up to 1.5 terabytes, like also, right? Okay, so those days there weren't that much memory, but anyway, so these resources are limited, this space, right? So limited, and they have to be shared among the multiple users and the multiple number of programs running, right? Let's say, for example, the CPU. Okay, so let's say think that there are 2 CPUs. If you take a server, there are usually 2 CPUs, right? Now these programs, when they are running, they definitely need the CPU and memory, right? And maybe hard disk as well, right? Now, how do 60 programs work all at the same time, right? So although they are being used at the same time, right, they cannot access these resources at the same time, right? Then how is it done? Okay, so we have the CPU, then we have the RAM, let's say, right? And then say we have the hard disk. So let me name this. So for hard disk, I put HDD, right? Hard disk drive. Okay, now let's say there are 20 users. So like 60 programs running. Now, how do they use this? So because they will be using the same, because they are in the same, server, right? So using the same server or computer, whatever, right? So, it will be the same resources they have to use, right? Now, um, I mean, like 60 programs cannot at the same time use any of these resources, right? That is not possible because the CPU can, do one thing at a time, right? And the RAM. So when the CPU is processing, it will access the RAM and hard disk, right? And so these other resources also, they cannot be accessed by all 60 programs at the same time, right? So how is it done? So how it is done is, now let's say now these 60 programs need the CPU for processing, right? So the time, right? If you take the time period, it's divided between what are the number of programs which are running, right? And then each are given a small amount of time, right? So, and you don't so when you are using the server computer, you don't actually realize that this is being shared, right? Because the delay is a very small, like millisecond or maybe less than that delay, right? So these work in that kind of speed, right? The CPU's RAM, they work in that kind of speed that you don't feel that the delay, right? So let's say these 60 programs, they will be given uh, maybe some milliseconds of time for processing, right? So let's say the first 2 milliseconds, it may be less than this, but I'm just giving an example, right? Okay, so let's say the first program access the first 2 milliseconds, and then the next 2 milliseconds by the second program, and so on, right? Yeah, so likewise, the time to use each of these is switched in this case, right? So a little bit of time is given to the first program, and then it is switched to the second, and then third, fourth, like that. Then it will go to 60, and then again to the first one, right? So likewise, it goes repeats until whatever the tasks are done, right? So when the programs are not using any resources, so they will not be allocated, right? Only the programs which need or which will be using these resources will be allocated the time. So the time is divided like this, and then that is how it works. So CPU, RAM, HDD, everything is shared in this manner, right? So that is how things are done, right? So although you think that, okay, everyone is using the same time, it's not the case, right? So you get a small time, and then the others also get some small time, and then it is repeated. So you don't feel the delay because it's a very small value. If you think the time of a second, right, this millisecond is 1,000 of 1/1000, right? So 1,000 milliseconds equals 1 second. So you can guess, right? Then if you go to more lower values, then you have microseconds, nanoseconds, and so on, right? So very small values. So when the CPU speed it goes up, then these times go down, right? The speed will increase, right? Okay, so this is usually how things work. So that is why it's saying the kernel's job to keep each process and user separate. Right. Each process and user. Each process means each program. So each, okay, it will separately allocate a space in maybe the RAM or hard disk. In the RAM, right? Usually the RAM. So all things are usually stored in the RAM, right? So there will be a separate space for processing or whatever in the RAM, and then it will be thrown to the CPU for processing, right? And then whatever the results will also be kept in the RAM. And then if some details need to be stored for a long time, then it will be stored in the hard disk drive, because the RAM, if you are keeping in the RAM, it is temporary, right? Until you lose power. So whatever the calculations, intermediate calculations, like not the final calculation, they will be most probably stored in the RAM, and then the final calculation, they can be most probably stored in the hard disk drive, right? So that is how things happen. So now 20 users, so they will have a separate kind of space in your maybe the hard disk drive or RAM, right? So in the hard disk drive, maybe this, in Windows there's a separate folder for users, right? In the uh, in the C drive, usually the C drive you install usually in the C drive. So in C drive you have this in Windows 10. It's the users folder, right? The folder name is users. Then when you go inside, you have separate names for each username you have created, right? Now that folder with the username contains all the things which are related to that particular user, right? So it's separated. So like another user, cannot go to that folder and double click and open another user's folder, right? That is usually the case, because security has been added in Windows, so that other users cannot see uh, files of, I mean, your files, right? Other users cannot see your files, and you also cannot see other users' files, right? So even if you log in as administrator, and you try to open another user's folder, it will say that you cannot access, right? So that is by default, that is there for, I mean, privacy purpose, right? But admin can, if the admin wants, the admin can take over. Okay, we will talk about these security settings. It's there in Linux also, right? It's something called the ownership. Right now, yeah, let me erase this. Okay, we will talk about it later when we come to the security settings, right? So ownership means, now if I own a folder, right? If the ownership of a folder is in my user's name, so another user cannot use it, right? Because it's the full security or permissions will be given to the owner, right? And others will not be able to. So the owner has full permission to do anything within that folder, right? So others don't have any permission to open or whatever. So that is why I cannot access others folders and others cannot access mine. But the administrator, right, the super administrator in Windows, um, okay, so why I'm calling super administrator is because there is a separate administrator account in Windows 10, especially. I think Windows 7 also there. So that administrator account, it has, now you can, if you want, you can create a user account with administrator privileges, but there is a default administrator account which comes with the Windows, right? Default. That has more permissions than the new administrator accounts you will be creating, right? So that case is the same in Linux operating system also, right? So there is a root account in Linux. So root is the super administrator, right? So separately you can create many admin accounts. So they will have administrator powers, but they will not have root power, right? Root is like super administrator. That is the administrator of administrator, right? So it's the same in Windows also. So the super administrator can, if needed, take ownership of another user's files or folder, right? For I don't know, maybe security purpose or audit purpose, whatever, right? But otherwise, normal users cannot open other users' files. Okay. So that is why it is meant each process and user will be separate. So user in the hard disk, there will be separate folders. Then in the RAM also, there will be a separate space for each user, right? That is a separate space in the RAM is allocated, will be allocated. That is for security, to make sure, the users, whatever. Now, 20 users for in the previous example, I said are using the same server, right? So whatever their data should not be accessible or mixed with other users' data, right? So if that happens, there might be a problem, right? Security and privacy. So so the kernel means that is the main let's say application of the operating system. In Linux we call, we are learning about Linux, so it's called kernel. Kernel is the main program which runs the operating system. So security and everything is handled by this kernel, right? So it makes sure that each process and each user is separate, right? So security, and then it will also make sure to share hardware with each user and each process, right? So including CPU, memory, disk, and other devices. Let's say you have a flash drive, keyboard, mouse. Those are coming from IO devices, means input output devices, right? So it can be anything: keyboard, mouse, printer, flash drive, portable hard disk, whatever. All those are taken as IO devices, right? Input output. So some may have input only, maybe the keyboard and mouse. Usually, when you type something in the keyboard, it will be input to the computer, right? Usually there is no output to the keyboard, right? It's input, mainly input. Output will be the lights, the num lock, caps lock. Those will be the only output to give to the keyboard, right? Otherwise it's input. So mainly it's input, so we consider that as an input device. And mouse also is an input device. You don't output anything to the mouse, right? So when when you use the mouse, so the cursor will go here and there. So according to our movement of the mouse, it will give an input signal to the computer, in which case the computer will move the mouse cursor, right? And then when you press some buttons, that button press is taken as input to the computer, and then something will happen, right? So those are input devices. Then what are output devices? For example, printer. That is output, right? You send something to be printed by the printer. So normally you don't get an input from the printer. It's mainly output. So if you talk about input from the printer, then sometimes through the software you can monitor. Maybe the ink is low, or maybe you're out of paper or something, right? Then so the printer will give a message saying those things, or the printer is jammed. So those kind of features are also there in the printer, but mainly the printer we take as an output device, right? So flash hard disk, portable hard disk, you can take as input output, both are there. You copy files and you write files. So those also is being managed by this kernel, right? So the kernel manages everything. So there may be some small programs each to handle this, right? The kernel itself will not be handling all these jobs. So maybe there are sub applications which control each of these resources, right? Okay, the first version of this Unix was created in Bell Labs in 1969, a long time ago, right? Okay, some of the Bell programmers, who had worked on this project is these names: Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie, Judd Kennedy, and Doug McRoy. Right, so they helped design and implement the first version of Unix file system, right? So starting this is very difficult. It's new, and so unless you use it, you don't know what are the if it will be a success or failure, right? So then this file system is created, then Unix name is given by this person, right? Brian Cunningham. Okay, then January 1, 1970 is time 0 for Unix. Okay, I think that is when this started. Unix started. It is called as epoch. Okay. So around 1970, this started, right? Started using this Unix operating system. Okay. Then 73, it was changed. The programming language was changed, right? Rewritten most in C, means C language, right? So that's a new language developed on that time. So you must have heard of the C language, right? So even Windows is written on C language.
Okay. So in 73 it was written in C language. So it's a high level language. Okay, and right. It greatly decreased the effort needed to port it to new machines. Right. So so that means when this was written in C language, uh, it's very easy to move into new systems, right? So that the hardware technology always evolves or changes, right, or improves, right? So then when the hardware and everything changes, we have to make sure this operating system also is compatible or supports, right? Or you might have to change the language or programming or whatever, right, to make sure that this operating system can run on the new hardware, right? So using this C language, it made things easier to move this Unix to new systems, right? Hardware. So even Windows is written in C language. So it's a very powerful language, the C language, right? Very powerful, right? You can do a lot of things in this C language. Most of the things, you have to do, there aren't many, functions and all that in C language, right? But you can do things mainly in detail, right? You have to specify like, this, not like, this Java and, C Sharp and things like that, right? So they have, built-in functions and so on. Yeah, you can directly call and use, but in C language, you don't have that kind of functions. So, you can do a lot of, you have to do, those functions also, you have to code separately, right? So it's very powerful. So your Windows is written in C language, right? So it's a very powerful language, it's a high level language. So yeah, so high level means there are two types of languages. High level is something that we can understand, right? So we can code in, understandable. That means human understandable language. That is high level. Low level means, so earlier it was, programming was done. There are languages which are low level. We call low level language. So those languages uh, don't have, words. For example, in programming language, when you say print this, then it will print to the screen, right? So low level, you don't have, understandable words like that. So low level means, the language that the computers can understand, right? Ones and zeros, binary. Uh, so it was very difficult those days to program, because there were like only low level languages available. So there are, then this low level, there were some commands. So you have to use those specific low level commands to say, okay, if you want to say copy a file, then you have to give the specific low level command to do that exactly, to copy first to the RAM or whatever, then like that. Okay, so now we have, we don't use lower level language, we use high level language, right? Much easier, customizable, and very powerful, right? Okay, in 77, there were about 500 unique sites worldwide, right? So now around 70 it started, right? Then in about in 7 years, you can see, so it has gone up to about 500 Unix, 500 Unix sites. So there, I mean, worldwide in the world, right? And then so this is how this improved. So then BSD 4.1 came, then Sun OS, you must have heard, Sun operating system. Yeah, and then in 88, AT&T, Sun My Systems, they have jointly developed system V Release 4. And this they developed into Unix and Solaris. So yeah, Sun Solaris you must have heard, right? So Unix and Sun Solaris 2, 88. Then in 1991, Linux was originated. So you see this Linux has come in 91, right? Much later. So Unix started in 70, and then about 20 years after, this Linux has come, right? So it's based on Unix, right? Linux is based on Unix. So Unix is more powerful, and it's very difficult to, unless you have the proper knowledge. It's a bit difficult for the a novice user, or can say a new user, right? Okay, so Linux is a free Unix type operating system created by this person, Linus Torvalds. with the assistance of developers around the world. So Linus Torvalds is the one who has created this Linux operating system, and he has used developers from around the world. So this is, remember, this is open source, right? Not like Windows. Open source means the source code is open. That means it's available to the public, right? Now in Windows, you do that. The source code is not available to the public, right? If someone wants the source code, you have to pay quite a lot for that, right? Anyway, I don't think Windows will be providing the source code to anyone, but if you need, then you have to pay quite a lot for that source code, right? So if you that the source code is the that's the if you have the source code, then you can change the operating system, customize, improve, things like that, right? The end result of the source code is the program. That's the executable, or yeah, basically the executable. So in binary form, right? So source code will be in readable form, right? If you take some kind of software, right, exe file, that is an executable file which is in binary, right? If you open that in Notepad or something, you can't read anything, right? Because the source, or the program code is not there, right? So if you have the source code of program or application, whatever, you can change it, you can improve it, or yeah, you can do anything, right, if you have the source code. So usually, even if you buy a license of a software, you don't get the source code, right? You only get the application, because no one will be giving the source code, because if they give the source code, then they won't be able to sell it, right? Because once you have the source code, then you can do anything. Right, now these open source things, right? Open source software, their source code is open or in public, right? So even you can access the source code and see, okay, how they have programmed, right, certain things. And if there are bugs, what are these bugs? So bugs are when you program, you make mistakes, right? There may be, it's although you check those the program code and all that, bugs, you cannot make them 100% free, right? There will be definitely be bugs in any application or program being developed, right? So you cannot say that any program is bug free. So that is why even when Windows, they put a new version, then they give updates, patches. So those are to correct the bugs which are in the code, right? So only later, when people start using, see the bugs. Okay, so in open source also there are bugs, and they will give patches, updates, and so on to the OS, and you have to make sure to update, right? Otherwise, you'll be having problems. So if you take this open source, right? Now in Windows, Microsoft is always patching, putting patches, updates, and so on, right? The fixing the bugs. But open source, there is no one person who will be doing it, right? Because it's open source, and no one is being paid to do that, right? In Windows, Microsoft, people are getting paid to fix the bugs and so on, right? And people are paying for the license and so on, right? But here, no one is paying for the license. It's free license, right? Free GNU, General Public License. So usually there will be a some group which will be working from maybe donations, right? So that group will check there are any bugs, and then they will create updates or patches for those bugs, right? So uh, you cannot have let's say customer support and so on for this open source, right? In Windows, you are paying for the license and you are getting the customer support from by paying the license as well, right? You can get if there are any problems in Windows, you can call Microsoft and you can get help. But in open source, there is no one to help, so you are on your own, right? So even updates, they will take some time, right? Because uh, people are it's a free operating system, right? Um, so let's say when there's a new version of Linux, there may be a lot of bugs, right? Those bugs will be patched in say maybe 6 months or 1 year. But until then, if you are using those systems, then you will have to deal with those whatever the bugs which will be there, right? So sometimes some things might not work, drivers or whatever. So unless a patch is being made, you cannot, you will not be able to properly use those kind of features, right? Now in Windows, there's a thing called error reporting, right? So when there's an error or bug, you can report to the Microsoft, right? So when you report, then they will look at it, and if it is really bug, then they will create update or patch, right? In Linux also nowadays there is this error reporting is there, but earlier it was not there. So in Linux also the same thing is there, but it's not, it's free, right? So you might not get the updates as quickly as in Windows. Okay, so this Linux started in 91 as a personal project of this Linux Tower, right? Which happens to be a Finnish graduate student. So kernel version 1.0, the first one, released in 1994, developed under the GNU General Public License. Okay, this general public, it's although it's free, it will be under this GPL license, right? What that license means is it's free for you to use, right? But you cannot change and you cannot make it a commercial, right? You cannot, let's say, you install this Ubuntu whatever version, right? Then maybe the source code is open, so you looked at the source code, then you fix some bugs, right? So now we have a version with fixed bugs, right? You cannot sell this, right? So anything under this GPL license, you cannot, even if you change it, you cannot sell, right? Because it's under public license. Yeah, so as I said, source code for Linux is freely available to everyone. So you can get the source code of those free versions for free, right? You can look at the source code, you can change, right? You can do whatever, but you cannot sell anything. You cannot put a commercial value to anything which is under this GPL, right? Because what I'm saying is there are some enterprise versions where you have to pay in Linux, right? Red Hat, CentOS, right? So for updates and for applications, you have to pay. So those will be not under this GPL license, right? So anything under this GPL license, it's public, and you can do any changes or whatever for your own purpose, but uh, you cannot distribute, right? You can distribute freely, but you cannot, make it commercial, right? You cannot make money out of it, right? So these are the, you must have heard some operating systems like Red Hat. It was there for some time, right? Long time. Fedora, SUSE, then Debian, then Mandrake. So I have used, except Mandrake, I have used the other variants, right? I haven't used Noel, but SUSE I have used, and Debian is actually the basic version of Ubuntu, which we use nowadays, right? Okay. Yeah, and then Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That is an enterprise operating system, which is advanced, stable, right? It is based on mature open source technology. Yeah, it is very stable, right? There are, I mean, the bugs and all, they have been fixed, and it is meant for servers. And it's very reliable than the normal, Red Hat normal operating system. So this enterprise version is very reliable one, right? And it's mostly meant for servers because there are the bugs and all have been fixed, and it does not fail that often, right? Due to bugs and so on. It's a very stable operating system. It's open source mostly, because of the bugs and all, they are not stable, you can say, right? So to use as a server or to provide a service to someone, it's not recommended, right? But these enterprise versions, they are the recommended ones to use for servers. Yeah, and available at a cost. At 1 year Red Hat Network subscription. Yeah, so as I said, enterprise you have to pay, right? Because they have uh, fixed the bugs and optimized this enterprise version in certain way so that you have to pay and get it. So support will be there as well. So because you have a subscription, and upgrade and support is there, so it's good, right? uh, you have support, then if anything goes wrong, you can directly ask them for help, right? So if you take this open source other versions, normal versions, you cannot get support from anyone because there is no formal entity for you to get support, right? Okay. Because with that enterprise will be mostly used for to provide services to customers, right, on a paid basis, right? So that those customers, they will want some help or support, right? So it's better uh, this sort of way. Okay, what are the benefits? So it's open source. Anyone with programming knowledge can modify it. That is what I said. You can get the source code, then you can modify, right? So you have to have some kind of knowledge for that. But you can get the source code and you can modify. If you have done programming, uh, you can understand these things, right? You can go through them and you can understand. Okay, Linux is now offer millions of programs to choose from. Yeah, so this Linux, there are various types of Linux operating systems now available, right? So Ubuntu is one and mainly used now. Then you have Red Hat, you have CentOS. So Red Hat and CentOS are both like in the enterprise level, right? Used commercially. Then you have SUSE Linux and yeah, what else? There are some other versions also. Oh, yeah, another one is Fedora. There is also yeah, Fedora also like an enterprise level version. And yeah, so Ubuntu, there are various types of Linux operating systems available nowadays. Okay, once you have Linux installed, you don't need an antivirus. Highly secure system. There's a global development community, right? Okay, so usually, why people are using Linux is, it does not get virus attacks like Windows, right? So Windows, there are a lot of virus attacks. In Linux, you don't get that much of virus attacks, right? So that is why a lot of people are using Linux for servers because they are stable and less virus attacks. Okay, now although in here it says no longer need an antivirus, it's changed a bit now because now in Linux also there are virus attacks. It's increasing bit by bit, right? The virus attacks in Linux. It doesn't have that much like in Windows. In Windows, that there are a lot of viruses. If you yeah, if you go to communication, you can see that, right? If you put a pen drive in a communication and then come back and plug somewhere else, you will see there will be a lot of viruses in your pen, right? Right. So you can see by that how many viruses are there affecting Windows. Some communications have antivirus installed nowadays, but sometime back I remember you have to have some kind of separate pen drive to for printouts. You are going to communication, and if you plug your pen drive into a computer there, then that's gone, right? Then it will be full of viruses. You have to maybe format it and use it. Otherwise, it will affect our computers also. Right. So Linux, and the virus attacks are limited, but now there's a trend for Linux to also get virus attacks. Right. So in future, Linux will also need some kind of antivirus program. Okay. There is a global development community, right? So this is open source, and the development, it's a community which will be uh, people around the world globally, right? So in every country there will be someone most probably in this community. So that means a vast amount of knowledge and uh, about this, right? So then they might have some kind of knowledge since they are from worldwide. So they have various kinds of knowledge because they are coming from different countries, right? So they can help enhance the security of this, right? So with each upgrade, this becomes more secure, right? So Linux is OS choice for server environments due to its stability and reliability. Yeah, so you can see Amazon, Facebook, Google. They are using Linux servers, right? Those are the the biggest companies, right? Amazon, Facebook, Google. So they are also using Linux for their servers. Okay, Linux-based server could run non-stop without a reboot for years on end. Right. and another advantage. So Windows, it gets stuck when we are using for a certain period. Then you have to restart, right? When it gets stuck. Now Linux doesn't have that kind of a problem. You can keep it on for say for years, right? And you don't have to reboot that much. So these are the advantages of Linux. So this is the structure. You have the hardware in the middle, and then you have the kernel running the operating system. Then system calls also in the operating system and hardware. Right? This is the Unix file structure. So on top you have the root.
Sir,
Yes.
so අපි විනාඩි 10ක විතර ඉන්ටර්වල් එකක් ගමුද?
අපි අතට දෙන්න පටන් ගත්තා. අපි 10ට ඉන්ටර්වල් එකක් ගමුද?
හා හරි සර්.
Excuse
Okay.
me.
Yes.
Sir, මේ අපි virtual machine වල දාලා practical කරන්න විදිහ සර් කියලා දෙනවා.
ඔව් අද මම කියලා දෙන්න ඉන්නේ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ තව virtual machine තියනවද?
ඔව් සර් මේ අපේ තව මොඩියුල් එකක් තියෙනවා system administrator කියලා. ඒකේ මේ අපි Linux තමයි ඉගෙන ගන්න. ඒක නිසා අපි මේ practice කරනවා ඒක. නෑ theory යද්දි ටික boring වගේ අර එක දිගටම
හරි. හරි. අපි එහෙනම් මේවයි කියන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවද කොහොමද?
නෑ සර් මේ මම මේ ඇහුවේ අර theory එක දිගට යනවාද කියලා මේ නැත්නම් අර boring වගේ අර theory ගොඩක් ඇද්දි අපි අර practical කරනවාද කියලා ඇහුවේ.
හරි. ඔව් කරනවා.
හරි සර් හරි. Okay, so this is basically the structure of the Linux operating system. You have the root, then you have these folders. So bin folder has the binaries, right? Or in Linux, you call these, you can call this the executable. In Linux, you don't have the exe files, but you have binaries, right? Then you have the dev folder, which has the drivers. Then etc contains the password files and the group files. Then lib contains the libraries. Temp is a temp folder. User contains the user files. Home folder contains the your user files as well, right? User contains actually the libraries of application settings which are related to the user, right? Home contains the user files. Okay, so it's inverted structure. It's a top-down, which has subdirectories, right? So top you have directory, then you have subdirectories, and it goes down, right? Okay, so these are folders, and then you have files. Okay, so you can specify a file or directory by using the path name, right? For example, given here /home/aruna folder and test1, right? Okay. Relative path name, okay. So you have full path name like this, starting from the root, and then like this. Then you have relative path. When you type, you type the path from the folder you are in now, right? Okay, and right. Okay, so root has all the files which are related to the operating system. Then bin has the tools and programs or binary files. Dev, it has the device drivers, for CD-ROM and so on. etc contains the configuration and startup files. Home has the user directories. Uh, lib contains library files. Post contains system process files. Root, root. This is the super user I was talking about, right? So root folder contains super users home. It's a separate one. So earlier root folders were in the root directly, but now it's in a separate folder called root, right? Now this slash is also called root, but so there's a separate folder in root folder called root for the super users files, right? Then there's sbin file which has the system binaries. TMP is for temporary files. USR contains files related to user tools and application. In Windows, inside your user folder, you have, app data, local, right? So though this is same as the file a folder in Windows. Yeah, you have app data or local, right? The same folder in Linux is USR. Okay, command line, yeah. So, there are a lot of, as I said, very powerful. You can do a lot of things in command line, right? This piping and things like that. Yeah. So some configurations, longer, or some are just a single command. If you are renaming like 1,000 files, you can do it in CLI by using commands, right? Using regular expression. Then CLI means command line interface, that is text-based mode, right? It is very fast and having graphical user interface. Okay, right. So these are about directories. We will do one in the virtual environment also. I'm just going through these so that you understand the basic, right? So so this every directory and file is listed in its parent directory. So if it is root, then the parent is root. Then okay. So what is a directory? Directory is a folder, right? It contains a table. Let's say, so this is a directory. Let's give it a name. I will put something like this. Right, so there's a folder called files or directory. Okay, that is not a good name. I will put something like this. So I have a folder called data, right? Then I have some files inside. So I have some files here. So a folder, what actually means is a folder contains a table, of the file names which are inside the folder, right? So it has a table containing the file name. So when you let's say you double click this folder or you change to this folder, So how do you see what are the files inside? So this table, reading this table, you can see what are the files which are inside this folder. So actually we think the files are inside this folder, but it's not the case, right? So it's actually a table, right? This folder is a sort of a table which has a list of the file names. So this is there to separate or group sets of files. Like when we are using a filing cabinet, we use a folder to separate files, right? Let's say files which are related to finance, we put in one folder, and then maybe something else, some bills or something, we put another folder, right? So to easily organize, these folders are there, right? Okay, table listing, giving file names to the inode numbers in the list. Okay, information about all the files and directories maintained the inode table. Yeah, so whatever files and directories. So there is this thing called inode table, right? It's a big table which, okay, that is not the correct one. So there is a big table which has all these listed. So I will show this when we move to the Linux environment. So data. So in the list, it shows that is a directory, right? Then we have these other files in that table as well. Right, so this is a big table which has all the details like folders, and then files inside those folders, and then maybe files outside this folder, everything. So inode or index node is an entry in the table containing information about file and the details, any details of the file, permission, whatever. Right? Okay. Okay, so in Linux there is a concept of user and group. So same in Windows. You have a username and then you have a group. So okay, system determines whether or not user group can access a file based on permission. Yeah, so there are user permissions and group permissions, right? Okay, apart from all the users, there is a special super user. So super user can actually access any file or directory, but a normal user cannot access all files and directories, right? Only the files folders which permission has been given, and definitely cannot access another user's files, a normal user. So these are the basic permissions of a file or directory, right? R, W, and X. R is for read, W is for write, and X is for execute. And then we have three types of permission categories. We have the owner of the file, then group, and others, right? Okay, so okay, so this is an example. When you type ls, it's the same as typing dir in Windows, right? So you get this output. Okay, so right, so you said you had done earlier some virtual operating systems. So does everyone have the knowledge of installing an operating system inside a virtual machine? Does everyone have the knowledge? Okay, so you all have the knowledge of installing operating system in a virtual machine, right?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So everyone has the knowledge, right? Okay. So are you able to, do you have a virtual machine with a Linux OS which is accessible now, or do you have to install in a virtual machine, or how is the case?
Uh, we can access to virtual machines. Some student cannot because their machines are not powerful. So sometimes those
Yeah.
machines are crashes. Still in another
Right.
lecture.
Okay,
So
so if you want, I can show how to install inside a virtual machine. But if you already know, then I don't need to show that.
yes, we know how to install Linux into the in the virtual machine. We
Okay, you have
install
already done that.
Debian. We installed Debian and CentOS.
Okay, so everyone knows, right? Okay, right. Then, okay, so then are you all familiar with the commands, or it's better to refresh those commands again?
Sir, we are not familiar with commands. We are just only install and studying.
Okay, right, right. Then we will do some commands, because some commands are there in this uh, lecture, right? This ls is one command. So it lists the file. So the same command in Windows is dir. When you type dir, it will show the output, right?
Okay, this ls is one of those commands where you can list the files in the the folder, right? Um, yeah, ls minus l will show you in this way. Okay, before going to the before showing the commands, I will just explain what is this, right? Now here, okay, yeah, the one oh no, wait, test. Yeah, okay. First, when you list a file, it will show the permissions, whatever in the file, right? Now you see this RWX, something like that. So here actually it's 3 groups, right? The first set of symbols RWX that shows you the owner access, right? Those are the permissions of the file owner. So who is the owner of this file? This Chandima. So that is the owner of the file. The name of the file is test, right? So this is the owner of the file. Then owner has full permission. RWX, read, write, execute, full. That is full permission, right? Then the second set shows the group access, right? So the next RWX that shows the group access. So this user Chandima belongs to student group. So this file is accessible, full access is there for the student group. So group means now we can create groups for the users, right? For example, for students. Now let's say for all of you, I can create a group called student, and then I can add all of you to the student group. Now, if I give student group permission to some file or folder, right? Let's say this file. If I give group permission, read, that execute to student, then all the users who are belong to this student group will have that access. So why do we group? It's easy, right? So when I apply a permission, all I have to do is just give this student group full access to whatever the full access or whatever the required access to a file or folder, right? Then automatically the users who belong to that group will get the permission. If I don't have this group, then how can I do this? I have to, select the users one by one and give them permission, which will take a long time, right? Let's say there are 100 students. So I have to, select all those 100 students separately and then give separate permission to a file or folder. Now, since I have groups, I can directly group a certain number of users and then directly give group permission. Then the last set of permissions are given to other users which not belong to this owner and group. So all other users. So here you can see R, W is not there, and then X. So read and execute permission has been given to the other users. That means all other users in the computer. So all other users can read and execute this file, but they cannot write to the file, right? Write access has not been given. So you see a dash here. So that is how you set permission to a file. So I will show you the commands and all that. Yeah, so here it explains all that. Yeah, file is also world readable, means everyone can read the file, but and world executable exists there, but not world writable. So other users cannot write on the file, right? So this is used to show the contents of a directory. Yeah, okay. Minus, if you use this -L parameter, then this command lists the contents of the working directory, the current directory, right? So pwd is another command which shows where you are, right? And then cd, same as in Windows, to change to another directory, right? So you can cd double dot means same in Windows also. Yeah, I will show in Windows. I will show in Linux later, right? So let me show you in Windows. So let's say we are, yeah, I move into the root of C drive, right? So I can change to Windows folder. Now I'm in Windows, right? So the command same to ls in Linux is dir in Windows. Right, so you can see it shows all the files and folders, and these folders are shown as dir directory, right? Now these files are just shown. I will show this later on Linux also. So even in dir there are, yeah, the help is to get the help in Windows, you use / and question mark, right? Okay, so display, okay, display 1000. So you can see there are options here. Yeah, you can, if you want to see only read-only files, you can use this parameter. Yeah, so D, if you use D, they are sorted by column. So if you are using L, it uses lower case. and then using the O, you can sort by name or size or whatever. Yeah, so R, and then yeah. So there are various commands given here. So I use the D parameter. Now it shows in a different sort of way, right? So D same as white, but files are sorted by column. Yeah, so only the file names are shown. If I just type dir, then the dates and all will be shown. Okay, let's take a break, and then we'll come back in 15 minutes. So then I will show you this in the Linux environment, right? These commands. So most of these you can do in Windows as well. You can get a command prompt and you can run some of these commands as well. Similar, right? In Windows, there are the parameters. There will be more parameters, advanced parameters in for example, text editors. And so on, but almost the same commands are there in Windows also, right? Okay, let's take a break and come. Okay, so this A/A means attribute, right? So I typed /A, then R, read only files. It shows me whatever the read-only files there are in the system. So likewise, if you want, you can find see directories, to list only directories. You can put the D word, or if you want to see the hidden or system file, you can see that. So H. So these are the hidden files, so or folders which are in the Windows folder. And so these are the system files or folders which are in the Windows folder, which has the system attribute, right? So above, so these files are actually the ones with the hidden attribute. So we can, we can combine those two together also, like, right. So these two folders has the hidden plus system attribute, both, right? So likewise, you can change the parameters, and so these, I'm listing only the directories. I can give like multiple parameters also, right? If I type like this, so just to show the names of the folders without this time stamp or anything, right? So I typed attribute D and then /D. So I can combine parameters. This is the same in Linux also. So in Windows also, you can use these commands, right? So you can check this and see, since all of you have this, all of you are, I think, in a Windows environment, right? So you can get a command prompt and type and see. So if you want to, to clear this, here now I have typed quite a lot, and if I want to clear this, to make things clear, just type CLS. That's to clear the screen, right? So you can see that the previous, I cannot see them now. So cleared the screen, right? Okay, now just type help, and you can get all the commands which are available in Windows. Okay, what is this? Okay. Right. See, a lot of commands are there. Now, this attrib command is to change attributes in a file. If you know about a virus that hides all your files in a flash drive, right? Hides all the files and folders in the flash drive, and then you think that okay, your files are gone. So there's actually a virus which will infect the flash drive, and then all the folders and files it will hide in your flash drive, and it will create a shortcut of all those files and folders. So what you see in your flash drive will be that shortcut, right? So when you double click, it will actually you are double clicking the shortcut, not the actual file or folder, right? Actual file or folder is hidden, so that shortcut is actually a virus. And then when you double click on your flash drive, it will infect your computer, right? So to get those files back, because they are hidden in the flash drive, so by using this attrib command, you can unhide those files. So the hidden attribute has been set in the files and folders. That is why you cannot see them. So by using the attrib command, you can unhide each file or folder, right? So yeah, there are various other folders. So this CD is to change the directory, same in Linux. Yeah, chdir is also the same. You have this chk dsk check disk, that is for repairing the file system. If there are errors or bad sectors, you can use that command to fix the errors, right? CLS is what I did, clear the screen. Right, CMD will start a new command. So this is, you can see the name cmd.exe. So if you type cmd here, it will open another command prompt, right? New one. Then color, yeah, and convert is there to convert from FAT32 to NTFS, right? Then you have this copy command. In Linux, it's CP to copy, files or folders to another place. Then you have the delete command, right? So delete one or more files. That is for file deleting, right? For folder deleting, there's another command. This part is for disk partition. Echo is for just showing messages on the screen. Yeah, erase also, that file is also command is also for removing files, not folders, right? Exit will close this. Yeah, then there's a file compare command also. You can compare two files. You can find. Format is to format drives, right? This is file system type. Help is this. Then yeah, you can put if else, and you can do various things. mkdir is to create a new directory. So it's the same in Linux also. Then move one file from one place to another. In Linux, that will be mv. Then path will show the path already here, and then print, just to print. Right, rd, that you use to delete a directory, right? rd or rmdir. So that is the command in Linux also to remove. Usually you cannot remove a directory which is not empty, right? If there are files or folders inside the directory, you cannot remove them. Okay, so title, to change the title of the window, and then xcopy is an advanced copy command which can copy subdirectories and like that, right? Right. So in Linux also, some of these commands are same, but some are different. Okay, so yeah, so give me a minute. Let me So I was hoping to show you how to install and do the virtual machine, all that. But since you know that stuff, give me a minute. I will install and then I will show you the virtual machine. So what is the virtual machine you used? VirtualBox, Oracle VirtualBox. Is that the one you used?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so it is installing. So right in the meanwhile, I will. All right. Okay. So in Linux, yeah. So the cd command is the same as in Windows. That is to change the directory, right? So I showed you earlier. Now in the command prompt, so I will be in some kind of directory initially, right? So by typing cd and then the path, I can go anywhere. I can even change the drive letter also. Right. In Linux, you don't have drive letters, right? It's different. It has mounting points. It doesn't have drive letters. So in Windows, you can type cd and de or whatever. You can go to the drive letter. But in Linux, it doesn't have drive letters. So you have to type some path, right? To which where you want to change the directory. Okay. So my virtual machine software is ready. In Linux, so you can view the current home directory. Oh, sorry, not the your current working directory by you typing pwd. That is present working directory. So anytime you change to some directory, you can type that command and you can see where you are now, right? So pwd is the command for checking the present working directory. Okay. Yeah. So now I have opened my virtual box. So I will be having some Linux on this virtual machine. Okay, I will keep the recommended size. Okay, now I have my VM. Yeah, so so this simulates the computer, right? You can boot and you can access the BIOS and so on. Okay, now these VMs, you can either you can freshly install, or you can there are created VM images available already, right? Readily available VM images where you can download and install, right? Download and you can directly use. So if you use one of those images, you can directly start using them, right? Or if you can if you want to fresh install, you can download one of the OS images and then boot with the image and install, right? So what I will do is I have already I have an image available. I will be using that. So let me go back to my Right. So I will remove this. So although I created that virtual disk image, I don't need that. Right. So I will be directly using a virtual disk image. Okay. So yeah, I'm extracting the image file. So okay. So these are the commands which will be there. Then we have mkdir, that is to create a directory. So it will create whatever the directory in the, where the, in whatever folder you are now, right? So to make sure that you are in the correct one, so you can type pwd and check whether you are in the correct directory, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
මේ ස්ලයිඩ් එක දාලා තියෙන්නේ මේ virtual box එක විතරයි පේන්නේ.
Amen.
දැන් හරි sir.
Okay. So yeah, sorry, I forgot that. So yeah, this mkdir, it will create a new directory. So by typing pwd, you can first find out where you are. Let's say you are in home, this Aruna and Univotech, right? In this directory, you are now in here. When you create a directory, it will be created in this Univotech folder, right? So let's say you created, gave the name as new. So then it will be home Aruna Univotech /new. That will be a folder, right? New folder. Yeah. If you when mkdir will create a directory, right? So if you want to create a file, then you have to, let's say a text file, then you have to use a text editor. Like for example, vi, or you have nano in Ubuntu, or in other operating systems, you have various other editors as well. But gedit also is there. That is the graphical one, right? Graphical editor. Now vi is a text-based editor, right? So it has a lot of tools where you can, lot of commands, advanced commands where you can type and do, right? In the file, you can, search, do advanced search, find and replace, things like that. So cd changes the path to wherever you want, and cd double dot will go up one directory. That means if you are now in this Univotech directory, so up means the previous directory, above is Aruna, right? So now you type pwd, you are in the Univotech directory inside, right? Now when you type cd double dot, it will go to the Aruna directory, go up one. In the Windows, when you press up, it will go up one directory. So same way, cd double dot. Yeah, so this shows prints home Smith. That's not exactly the correct one, right? It should be home Aruna. Okay, then if you type cd/home, it will go to the home folder directly here outside. Then if you just type cd without anything, you don't type a location or where you want to change, right? It will default go to your home folder, which will be home/your username. Yeah, so it should be Aruna here, right? The name. Because right. So that is how the cd command works. Let me check. if I have extracted the image, okay, I have the image. So it will be a bit slow in my machine also because you know, accessing a virtual machine, then the computer will become a bit slow. Okay, I'm copying it to the correct directory which I created. Okay, so these are some commands, mkdir. Then we have the rmdir, which is delete the directory. So yeah, so delete, remove directory if it is not, yeah, sorry, if it is empty. If it is not empty, then you cannot delete, right? It will not allow because it is there to make sure that you don't accidentally remove any folder with files in it, right? So because of that purpose, you cannot use this command to delete folder which has files or folders inside. Even if you have a, you know, blank, let's say just a folder is inside without any files, it will not allow. Then you have to first go inside your this. What I mean is this. Let's say, so like in the previous example, you have a folder called new one inside home Aruna, and then let's say there is another folder. Inside new one called new two. So actually it's just a folder, right? New two is just a folder. There are no files inside. This is the full path, and cd double dot is the relative path. So it will go up one directory. So same as typing this full path like this. So now I can delete this new one folder because there's nothing inside, right? So that is the case with rmdir. Okay, I think my VM file is ready now. Okay, so so I will set my VM. Yeah, so I will choose existing disk. Okay. So this is connected to SATA port 0, and then yeah, so there are some other things which I can change also. These settings are not there before. Okay, so you can make it as an SSD or hot pluggable. Hot pluggable means you can remove the disk online. Okay, so let me power this on. So I actually downloaded an virtual image, virtual OS image, which was already there in the internet. So this is a new version, Ubuntu 20.04. That is the LTS version, long-term support. You get two versions of Ubuntu, right? One is the LTS and one is the normal one. LTS version, usually they support around 5 years, I think, updates, right? The normal version only supports, I think, 1.5 years or 2 years or something. So the version of the normal Ubuntu will be different from this LTS. So I think every 2 years they upgrade this Ubuntu version of LTS. So previous one was 18.04. So next one will be in 2022. That will be 2204. So in the virtual machine also you can see the lights and so on, right? The hard disk light, you can see it's blinking at the bottom, like, you know, a real computer, right? Okay, so I think it takes some time to boot. Let's look at some more commands. Okay, so yeah, so to create a file, you can use the vi command that's usually there in any Linux version. You know, with vi was there since Unix, right? That command. It's a very powerful editor. It's bit difficult to use. That is, if you are new to it, right? So once you get used to it, you know, you can do a lot of things with vi. Okay, yeah, I will show those commands, right? Once I boot my OS, right? Now the copy command, yeah, in Windows it's copy, right? Copy, then the source file name, then the destination file name. In Linux or Ubuntu, any variant, it will be CP. Okay, so both files must be in the same working directory. Copy file 1 to file 2. Yeah, if you type like this, that is, yeah, let's say copy file 1 is the name of the file you want to copy. Then you have to give you have to give the new name of the file, right? So maybe, if you want to keep it the same name, you can have the same name, or you can, change the name, right? So you can copy one file to another place with the name also changed. Right. So if they are if you want to copy a file from one directory to another directory, then you have to give the path. For example, now if you are in the same directory, you can just type copy file 1 to the new file name, right? File 2, same directory. If you are in another directory, then you have to, give the directory path also, like this. Then you have to give the file like this. So you're copying a file 1, which is now in the current directory, to a new location, another directory, right? So I have given the full path here. If you want to copy this file 1 to some subfolder in this same folder which you are in, you can give a relative path. So let's say this file 1 is in, this is the path of file 1. Let's say home Aruna new one. Let's say now you are in this new one folder, right? So there's also a new 2 folder, but that is actually not inside this new one folder, right? It's outside. So then you have to type. It's better to type the whole path like this, right? But let's say there is a, you want to copy it to some new 3 folder, let's say, which is already inside new one, right? If this is the case, then you can type the command copy file 1, then directly you can give a relative path like this. Since it is already inside a subdirectory in this your current folder, right? If it is outside your current folder, right, then it's better to type the full path like this. Let's see whether my so you can pause and resume, right, the virtual machine, right? Pause will keep it in a pause state, so all the settings and whatever you have done will be there, and then when you resume, so it will come back. Okay. This seems to be stuck, I think. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I will reset. So if it gets stuck, you can reset the virtual machine and yeah. Wait. I think I did not install the extension of this virtual machine. Okay, I turned it off. Let me install the extensions. So there's this extension pack in VirtualBox that it's better to install than mouse, keyboard, and integration will be smooth if you install. Right. So yeah. Okay. Now let's start up. Yeah. So this is like the real computer, right? Here you can see. Yeah. When Ubuntu is updated, those old versions will be displayed here in the advanced options, right? But default it will go to the newest kernel or update. But the older ones you can see here. So this is the kernel version, right? 5.8. So when you get updates, this will increase like 5.9 like that, right? And the older versions also will be here. So if you want to boot with the older version, that is also possible. So I will boot with the whatever the newest version. I think there's currently only one version now, but if I put the updates, sometimes it might update the kernel version. So I think earlier it got stuck because I had not put the extensions. So the same place where you download VirtualBox, you can download the extension also, right? VirtualBox extension. Yeah, so let me close this. Okay, so now this, as I told you, yeah, it will, yeah, although you see this screen, if you, by pressing escape, you can see what's going on, right? That GUI screen is to, hide whatever is going on at the back. So if you install a server version, so this is a desktop version, usually in the server version, you see all this text, whatever the, what is currently going on, right? Again, if you press escape, then it will go to the GUI where, it will just show some kind of progress bar. It will show only, it will not show everything, just some minimal. And if you press escape, then you can see what is really happening, right? It's booting and starting some services. You can press escape to again go to the, where you won't see anything, just a progress bar. So, by checking this, you see a OK in the left. That OK means things are okay, like booting up or starting services. Sometimes you might see the status as failed. So then you have to check, if there are any problems. Usually, all of them should show okay. if you know, one or two sometimes they fail, that's okay. But if there is a lot of things that fail, then that means your OS is corrupted or something, right? So I just turned off earlier, so it might have gotten corrupted. So you have to properly shut down Linux OS, you know, otherwise it might get corrupted. You can fix if it gets corrupted, but you know, not like Windows. It's very difficult. If you know some critical files get corrupted, then you have to, you know, maybe put again Ubuntu or whatever the OS disk and recover the OS, right? If it is too critical. Okay, I think the newer versions, they are taking up a lot of resources, so that is why they are taking time. If you know, take a older version of Ubuntu, right? Maybe 14, 16. I think they should boot up faster than this. So you see here, you know, now this is a virtual machine. So, you know, it has CD-ROM as well, right? It's a virtual CD-ROM. So, you know, you can, if you have an ISO image of, you know, of what you want to insert here as a CD or DVD, right? Then you can choose that disk image and insert, right? Then once you go inside the operating system, it will show it as a CD or DVD, right? Your image. Then USB, you know, flash drives and so on, whatever you have plugged into your computer, you can access from here, right? It will integrate, so shared folders and anything in Windows, it can access from here. Okay, I don't know what happened. It seems to be stuck. Okay, I will go to the slide until this recovers. Okay, so we talked about the copy command, and then there's the move command. So it's MV, right? MV is the command. So first, file 1 is the current name of the file, then file 2 is the new name of the file, right? So you can have both the same, no issue. So then file 1 will be removed from the original location, and it will be moved to file 2. If in the same directory, then you can't have the same name here, right? Because you can't have another file with the same name, so you have to, it's like renaming. If you put in the same directory, it will be like renaming the file. So for example, let's say move, yeah, there's a file called test1. So I cannot type like this, right? Same folder, I cannot. If in the same folder, I have to type something like this: test1, move test1 to test2. It will be the same like renaming, right? So the move test1 file to test2 file, which will be in the same folder, and then the test1 will be removed. So this will be the same as renaming the file. right? Because you are having the new file in a new name in the same place. Now, if you want to move somewhere else, then we have to give the path. So then you can have either the same name or you can have a different name. So I use the same name, then a different path. Now this test one from the current folder will be deleted and then it will be moved to the new place, right? So copy will, copy the file. So the current file will be there also, and then there will be a new file, a copy of the same file. Move will, remove the file from the current location and then to the new place. So if you currently have the Linux environment, if you can access, you can type these commands and see, right? So to create a file, either you can type like this, vi, then test1, test2, or you can give any name. It will open in the vi editor, right? If vi should be there in every Linux version, but if you don't have it, and if you are in Ubuntu, you can use this nano editor, right? It's usually there in Ubuntu. Nano test1, then it will create a test1 file in the current folder and then open for you to edit in the nano editor, right? So let me see if my virtual machine has come up. Okay, there seems to be an issue with that. Let's see if I can somehow get at least the okay, I should have got a server version, then it will be easier than this. The virtual machine booted up, but there seems to be a problem with the GUI or something. Okay, I will reset and see. Okay, so until I get my virtual machine working, you can try these commands and see, right? Okay, so for it to move, so if you are typing the command without any file paths or whatever, just the file names, both files must be in the same working directory. Yeah, so anyway, file 1, you are moving file 1 to file 2, so it will be created in the new directory, sorry, in the same directory, and file 1 will be removed, right? Yeah, so if you want to move to another folder somewhere, right, you have to type the path like this, then it will be deleted from this current directory, right? So rename and move, both the same command is used, right? To rename in the same folder, you just type mv, then the current file name, then the new file name. That will rename the file. Then if you want to move it to another folder, right? You type the path of the destination folder in the command, right? Like this. So then that will move the file to the destination location. So this is how you rename and move a file. Both will be done using the same move command. Okay, the command rm, rm removes the file from a system. Yes, rm is to remove a file right? And then, okay, here you have wildcards here also. If you use wildcard like this, you will remove all files beginning with H and ending with C. If you type the command like this, so let me clear the previous ones. If you type the command like this, all files which are starting, so RM is used to delete files, so only files will be affected, not folders. So every file starting with H and ending with C, the middle can be anything. So they will all be deleted if you type this command, right? So this will be in the current working directory. If you type rm just star, right, it will erase all the files from your directory. A very dangerous command, right? That, so I told you earlier, using these wildcards in Windows is very dangerous.
Yes, actually. Use this command. I don't know how to use it, so I check it and my whole data.
You use rm star.
Yes, I think I use RM and star.config.
Where in which folder did you use the command?
I mean, I think I was in root folder.
You did it in root folder.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so that
it is not working to the other user, so I root user.
you use the root user to do that. Yeah, so you have done the then most dangerous thing, right? Having the root user, using the root user to use these commands is very dangerous, right? As I said earlier, these wildcards are very dangerous. You have to be careful when you are typing these wildcards, especially the star, and with the rm command, right, remove, right? If you have root access, then since root has full access of the system, the minute you type the command and press enter, then it's done, right? You cannot cancel or whatever. It will be in an instant that will happen, right? So you cannot undo also, right? And there are no recycle bins in Linux, so you have to remember that, right? When you type a command, if you are using the graphical and maybe deleting a file, yeah, so most probably it will go to the recycle. But when you are using the command line, there is no recycle, right? The minute you delete, it's done. You cannot undo. So that is why I said this, especially this, these wildcards with the remove command, either rm or rmdir. It's very dangerous, and by mistake, if you did this in the root directory, so root directory means this, right? Okay. Yeah, root means the highest directory we have, right? So this directory contains all the subdirectories, which I think I showed you earlier. I showed you the structure, right? Let me show you again here. So root is the topmost directory, like in Windows, the C drive. If you go to C, it will have all the folders there, right? So from there, if you type this, rm star whatever that command, it will actually remove all the files which are there. And yeah, so it will actually remove the files in the current directory only, using the rm command. So just using rm and like this, it will delete everything which is in the current folder, right? So if you are in the top folder and you are logged in as super user root and you type this, then all the whatever files which are there will be deleted outside, right? So if you want to delete files in the subdirectories as well, so rm will actually delete files which are in the current directory. So if you're in the root, so anything outside will be deleted. So that is the default behavior. So there is a parameter for deleting things recursively, right? Like in a loop. So rm minus r will recursively delete everything, even in subfolders also. So if you use this, that's the most dangerous command available, right? It will delete everything. It will delete all the files inside all the subfolders and everything. And so when you delete, you have to be very careful. And if you are using admin or root account, then you have to be extra careful, because once you type this and press enter, you cannot undo this, right? Then most probably you will have to reinstall. So when we are coming to this commercially available, when we are dealing with servers, so now you are just installing your something in your computer, right? But let's say when we come to servers, right? So we have customers who are paying to have the services and everything in these servers. Now then it will be very dangerous if you type mistakenly something like this, then all the customer data will be gone, right? Then you cannot recover, and that will be a big problem. So as I said, Linux or Unix is very powerful. So remember, this rm minus r is a very powerful command, and if you type it, if you use it or misuse it, then you're done, right? There is no going back unless you have a backup image of your operating system with all the files and whatever. Then you can recover, but if you don't have a backup image, well, then you're done, right? So see this rmdir and this rm minus r or rmdir minus r, those are very dangerous commands. So you have to be careful when you use them, and it's better to use them without logging in as the admin or root, right? Then that will make sure that even if you make a mistake, then it will not be a global sort of mistake. right? And somehow you can anyway, whatever you delete, you cannot recover, right? I mean, recover in the sense like it won't go to the recycle bin, right? It's like shift delete in Windows, where it will, you know, permanently delete. So actually, that permanently delete means actually it will not be permanently deleted from the hard disk, right? So you can use a recovery tool to recover whatever the lost files. But you know, in this case, in Linux, if you type a command like this and you know everything is deleted, you know, recovering all and you know restoring that the OS back is it's very difficult. You know, there are a lot of configuration files. So just user files is okay. You can recover and you know the files are there, no problem. The files will be there. But you know, configuration files and everything, operating system files, you know, recovering them and putting them as the same way as before, it's very difficult, right? You have to put in the same place, the path, you know, permission, whatever. So when you are using a recovery tool, you know, you might not be able to do that, right? You can get the files, but you can recover the files, whatever is deleted, but you might not be able to get the, you know, correct path where the file was deleted from, those things, right? So it will not be, you will not be able to restore the previous state if you know accidentally delete using that command. Okay, so I
සාමාන්‍යයෙන් සර් මේ ඔය වගේ සර්වර් එක දාද්දි මේ බෑකප් ස්ටෝරේජ් කීයක් විතර තියෙනවද සර්? සාමාන්‍ය අපි හිතමු නෑ සර්වර් එකටම ඔය ස්ටෝරේජ් එකේ දාන්නේ නෑ නේද? මොකද මේ හදිසියේ සර්වර් එක ෆේල් වුණා කියලා.
backup කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි. It's like this, right? Backup storage in a server means, okay, usually backup should be not in the same server. It should be a separate server or in a separate location, right? Whatever the backup. Now, if you have some RAID kind of thing, mirror, let's say, you have the RAID facility and the mirror, and so you have mirrored the hard disk, right? Now, if you delete the files, so it will automatically write to the other disk from the hard there, right? RAID card will automatically write it to the other disk as well. So having backup like that will not be of any use. If you make a mistake in one drive, the RAID will copy it to the most probably other drive. You have mirror, right? So and it's difficult to control that, right? Because usually the RAID it copies to the other drive maybe at the same time or maybe with a delay, but we cannot be sure, right? Because any mistake we do on one disk, if that is copied to the other disk, then there is no backup, right? So there should be some kind of offline backup available, so that if you know something like this happens, you can recover. Otherwise, you will not be able to recover something like this, right? If you accidentally delete. If you have some kind of offline backup, then you know whatever you do here, any mistake will not apply to that offline backup. So you know you will be able to recover something at least. So in this case, this command, you know, if you mess it up, then you're done, right? There's no going back unless you have a, you know, previous day, you know, backup. Then you know you can get it to the previous day, but still from the backup and until now, that data you cannot recover, right? So some data will be missing. So anyway, Yeah, so I tried to get my VM running, but it doesn't seem to work. Yeah. So you can try these commands and see. So I think you, yeah, so let me just, yeah, I will get some output from the internet and show you since I cannot access my VM. I was going to show you by installing, but since you already know that, yeah, so I didn't. So let me first, okay, the VM, let me try one more time if I can. So, you can, try installing VMs and see in your computers itself, because, you can keep your Windows operating system and then you can test these other operating systems by installing it in the VM, right? So otherwise, since you don't have, separate computer or laptop to, try these, you can use the VMs and try these. So there should be some amount of RAM available in your computer or laptop. So, if you have like 8 GB or more, then you should be okay. If you have like 4 GB, then it's difficult, right? So Windows 10, if you are having 64-bit, then you should have at least 8 GB of RAM. So you can, increase the RAM in your computer by getting another RAM, additional RAM, right? If you have space in your computer or laptop to plug in. So if you have at least 8 GB, then you can run the virtual machine and you can install some OS. If you have 4 GB also, it's possible, but it will be quite slow. So better to have at least 8 GB in your computer. So I will try one last time to boot my virtual OS. So those of you who have Linux available now, you can try whatever the commands. Don't try the RM and RMDIR. Be very careful with that command, right? And better not use the root or admin. Just the normal user. If you use, then that should be okay. So as I said, in Linux, you can change configuration files as well, right? If you are using root, so you can do anything. So when you are changing these configuration files, it's better to have a copy or backup copy first before you change, right? If anything goes wrong, then you can use the backup copy to otherwise the same thing which happens with the RM command will happen there. If you make any small mistake in a configuration file in Linux, right, your Linux might not even boot, right? If that file is startup critical file, a small mistake, even maybe a space bar, or even if you delete a letter or something, a row or whatever. So that will give an error, and your OS might not boot, right? So you have to be very careful when editing Linux configuration files, and deleting also you have to be very careful. So please, you can Google the internet and check the command syntax properly, or you can get the help, right, using man command, MAN. If you type man as manual, so that's the same as help in Windows, right? Any command you want to know, just type man and then the command. Let's say you want to know about the copy command, man space CP. That will show you the whatever the parameters which are available for the copy command, right? And then other commands the same. You can look at what is the syntax, right? So everything is there, wildcards and everything, it's there in the help. So if anything is not there in the help, you can Google it and find out, right? So this RM command, when you are using wildcard especially, please make sure that the syntax is correct. So incorrect syntax will sometimes delete everything, right? Incorrect syntax when you're using the wildcard especially, right? Even if the syntax is wrong, even it will read it as something else, and then it will delete. So for example, wait, let me see if my the Ubuntu boots up, but it doesn't show the graphical. Okay, so for example, let me show you a command right now. If I want to remove, let's say, all the all the files starting with let's say GH or something. So dot, if I can type like this also, right? So this means whatever extension and whatever file starting from GH, right? So so you should not, when you're typing, you have to type it properly. If you maybe type it like this, or you don't put it in the proper order, this wildcard. So this might be taken as remove all files, right? And then it will delete all the files. So the place where you put the wildcard, you have to be very careful. If you make a mistake, it will actually take it as all, so, and you're in trouble, right? Especially when you are putting this in the front like this. So let's say you accidentally put something like this. Okay, you put a space, right? You accidentally put a space after this star. Then when there's a space, it will, you know, omit whatever after the space, and then it will read as RM star, which will remove all the files which are there, right? So that is what I said. You have to be careful when typing. If you make a, you know, mistake here, and you cannot undo this also, right? So you have to be very careful when using wildcards with this delete or rmdir commands. Because, you know, let's say, you know, type in a hurry and then, you know, some mistakenly you put a space like this. Once you press enter, that's it, right? You cannot undo it. It will happen very fast. This Linux, right? It won't take long to, you know, delete all the files. When this command is actually being typed, actually what happens is deleting means actually the file will not be deleted, right? Only the record to the file will be deleted from the disk, right? The files will be there and the data also are there.